Hey guys, what is up? Super K-Man Rocks here, and we are here for my LTA North Round 3 and Semifinals overview and analysis video. By the end of this video, we are going to know our domestic finals. We're going to know our 3 teams that are guaranteed locked going to the regional qualifiers for Worlds, and we're going to have our final elimination of the year in 4th place here in the LTA. So a lot on the line for everybody, and generally speaking, we just didn't think it would be these 4 teams that would be near the end, especially in the order that they are in. So I'm excited to go over everything. I hope you guys are excited as well. Let me know what you thought of the series down in the comment section below. Very curious to know where you guys land on everything that happened over the course of not only this video, but of course everything that's been happening in the playoffs in the LTA North, with how many upsets and just how many breakouts we've been able to get over the course of this playoff run. Like, what do you make of a lot of the outcomes? What do you make of a regular season where games were very limited? And do you think that it's, kind of indicative of the fact that maybe there weren't a lot of games played that we are getting so many upsets, or do you think that's just naturally how North America is going to end up going? I'm curious to know where you guys land on everything down in the comment section below, but let's go ahead and get into the video itself. If you are new here, what we're going to do is go series by series, talking about the advantages and disadvantages that each team was able to generate. I'll be giving a player of the series and a dud of the series for each series that we cover. At the end of the video, we have one more series left to preview domestically. Typically speaking, I like to do game by game for both semifinals and finals if possible, but in reality, the regional qualification isn't really all that important. The moment you end up getting past top 4 and getting into that top 3, everything from that point onwards is just, it's fine. It's nice to be able to guarantee the #1 seed so that you only have to win 1 series in the regional qualification to make Worlds, but for the most part, the importance, I would say, of the semifinals is less domestically than it is normally. We'll go more in depth when we do the regional qualifications, the cross-region rivalry matchups, but at least for now, the only one who's getting a game-by-game breakdown is going to be the finals. But with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the actual analysis, and that starts off with the more important series, ironically enough, even though it's earlier on in the playoffs. It's the qualification series. The winner of this is lower bracket round 3. The winner of this qualifies for the regional qualifier, and the loser is done for 2025. No matter what, there are no championship points in North America. You either have to get top 3 or you are out. And both of these teams coming from very, very different sections. It's the #1 seeded Cloud9 taking on the #7 seeded 100 Thieves. And 100 Thieves are going to pick up the 3-2 victory. They're going to go the distance all 5 games, and yet they are going to win this series. And Cloud9, a team that's widely been considered to be top 2 all year long, who was the #1 seed, undefeated in the regular season going into the playoffs. They are done. Their year is over. They have no opportunity to try and go to Worlds. They have no opportunity to play any more games. They lose to Shopify Rebellion in the upper bracket. They lose to 100 Thieves in the lower bracket. And that means they're not in top 3. And you know what? At this point, they've earned it. Like, there's nothing else left to say. This team has underperformed at every possible avenue. And for the last time in this decade, it really does feel like, my hope in Cloud9 has been dashed. I don't know if I can feel good about this team going into next year, regardless of who's on it, because what Cloud9 as an org have shown, especially since like 2021, 2022, is that they are going to shrink in big moments. And it's not even in the ways that they normally do. Typically speaking, when we looked at this year as a whole and looked at where they struggled, players like Blabber, I don't think were great in big moments. A player like Sven sometimes could kind of crumble a bit in big moments. Vulcan has been really good. Loki and Thanatos have been really good for this team, but that wasn't the case in this series. I think there were very obvious signs of weakness, and now Cloud9 in 4th place is not even going to be a top 3 team in North America in 2025. But for 100 Thieves, the last dance, the final hurrah, they are moving on to top 3. They're moving on to get a chance to qualify for Worlds, and you know what? The last split buff is just real. At this point, there's honestly nothing else left to say. This team did not win a single series in the regular season. Let's not forget that they were 0-3 in the regular season. They were really terrible for the most part in the spring split as well. Even coming off of a finals appearance in winter, it felt like this team was slowly descending into lackadaisical gameplay because the entire team had just kind of given up with the fact that not all of them were guaranteed jobs going into 2025. But I think that fire that had been lit under them, the fact that I think they realized, hey, we're not going to be on this org next year. If we want a guaranteed roster spot, we need to play well right now. We need to prove that we can elevate a team. That's exactly what they did. 100 Thieves come out and absolutely show up in this series. It's absolutely insane to be a bottom 2 seed and to make top 3. So we'll go ahead and talk about it here. River, for me, is going to be player of the series, although realistically, I think you can give this to basically anybody on 100 Thieves. You know, I talk about this all the time in the other regions, but I really want to make the point clear for this series in particular. When you go all 5 games in a best of 5, it is almost impossible to pick a player of the series and a dud of the series, because at multiple points throughout this series, 100 Thieves will have lost 2 games, and they looked quite outclassed in both of the games that they lost, and they would have won 3 games where, you know, I think the pluses and minuses were kind of all over the place. Like, certain players had certain great games, and it just all came down to who I think was the most consistent over the course of an entire series. That's why I'm giving it to River. Not only was he the most important player in the 5th and final game, getting that Pantheon, and again, we'll talk about the draft once we get to it, because it's a very hot topic issue right now, a hot button issue, if you will. But I think River really was the one to kind of push them forward in a lot of the games. I think his Vi game, super underrated in game number 1. The Jarvan was very good, I think, in game number 3. Generally, River was the go button. And the reason this is so exciting for me is because, honestly, this is the antithesis of River's typical narrative. And I know that feels kind of weird for a player that's actually had quite a bit of success, not only on 100 Thieves, but on, you know, a lot of teams that he's played for, even before he came over here to North America. This is a player who traditionally has not been very good in best of 5s. And again, I know that feels weird to say, but go look at the history of him playing in these best of 5s. Even when his team is winning, oftentimes he'll have a game or two where he's just not good. And especially, I think the conversation around River has been kind of the same as like someone like Shanks over in the LPL, if you guys have followed my LPL content, where the beginning of the year is always so good for a player like River. He starts out so hot, and then by August, September, you know, things have cooled off a lot. Like, he typically kind of runs out of gas as the year continues to go along. That's kind of been the case for him throughout every part of his career. That's not the case right now. I would say this is the best that River has played in the last 2 years. And everybody knows I was a lot lower on River last year, even when this team was kind of defying expectations and doing a lot more than people expected. I didn't think River was the one carrying them. I thought Quid was doing a ton of the heavy lifting, and I thought the bot lane was incredibly good for this team, but now it really is River. I think he's been the most important player in their playoff run. I think he truly has been exceptional. And if this is his last hurrah alongside 100 Thieves, you know, a player that's talked a lot about potential retirement going into 2026, this is a really great way to go out, because again, I think this is the best he's played in quite a long time. But that's not to take away from the rest of the team. FBI was excellent in their wins. If he was better in their losses, he probably would have been player of the series for me. You know, he always steps up when it matters the most. I've always been a big FBI defender. Go back to the 2023 videos I posted on this channel about the LTA and about the LCS. You'll see a ton of comments saying that I'm too high on FBI, and every single time it just gets proven that this guy knows how to win, and he knows how to do basically every aspect of the game. He used to be one-dimensional. He is certainly not one-dimensional anymore. He's a good laner, and he's a good team fighter. Ayla outplays Vulcan once again. This is the second time where Ayla goes up against Vulcan in a big best of 5 after their kind of pseudo Twitter beef, and ends up being the one to prevail. And honestly, Ayla was great in this series. I think the Taric in game 5 was really relevant and very important towards the team's success. I think the Braum and the Rel were also very good. Even if you look at the playmaker games like the Bard and the Rakan and you don't see quite the same kind of impact, I don't think it was all on Ayla. I honestly think he was really good here today. And again, Ayla, another player that I've gone to bat for over and over and over again. You know, talked about him as a top 4 support when people are really out on him. You know, even the FlyQuest days, especially the Evil Geniuses days, I was talking about this guy as being really talented. So I'm really excited to see that, you know, every single time I kind of get proven right in that equation. Ayla was really, really relevant towards 100 Thieves qualification for Worlds last year, and he might be the same this year. We haven't even talked about Quid yet. He's still the best player on this team. He pulls out some crazy picks in this series. It's clear that 100 Thieves have found something in scrims that have led them to believe that getting Quid on an assassin or a carry or something that can really take over a game is just the recipe to win pretty consistently. You got things like Viego mid coming out in game number 4, the Akali obviously in game 1, the Yone in game number 5. That was pretty massive. People are going to talk about the game 5 draft diff, and I agree, but I do think that a lot of the draft diff comes down to, okay, well, what can you do with that Twisted Fate prio in the mid lane with Loki? Like, if you can get TF out on the map and get Senna and Vladimir super fed, like, I don't think the game 5 draft is really all that bad. Vlad should have a pretty easy laning phase, and Senna's going to be able to scale alongside the Smolder. There are ways to play this out if TF can play, but the fact that Quid was better than Loki in game 5 is what really sealed the deal. This is the best mid laner in North America, and I think he went and proved that from his raw mechanics here. Dokla being a mid-season sub coming out of coaching and going into, you know, almost qualifying for Worlds. This was a guy who was playing for Nightmare at the beginning of the year and was trying to qualify back into Tier 1, and now he's, you know, a couple series away from making the World Championships. Absolutely insane. Dokla has been really important in this run, definitely better than Sniper. 100 Thieves are just clicking, at the right time right now, and I'm just really excited for the players. I think you can talk about, oh, there's a little bit of frustration, I think, coming out from LTA fans that I do kind of share, where it's like an org that's abandoning the scene and saying that there's not really a lot of hope in League of Legends, gets rewarded by getting to go to Worlds, but whatever about that, right? Like, the players have earned this. There are so many players on this team that have been doubted and have been overlooked, and they continuously prove that in big moments, they're the ones you want in these best of fives. But for Cloud9, it's the complete opposite conversation. There is almost nothing I can say at this point outside of, sorry, man, like, Cloud9 was really a team that we had high expectations for, and all they've done is shatter those expectations over and over again. They did it last year. They did it the year before. This team cannot live up to their own sense of hype, and at this point, Cloud9 have been toppled as giants here in North America. They no longer can be considered one of those upper-tier organizations if they are going to continue to underperform. I hate to make this comparison, but Cloud9 is the Fnatic of North America now. Like, there is no other way to say it. It's funny because both of them kind of had their peaks at the same time, but it is what it is, right? Like, this is a team that's always going to fail to get over the hump, and even Fnatic has been consistently able to make Worlds. That's not been the case for Cloud9, and this was supposed to be the roster to do it. Thanatos has been excellent, the best top laner in the league. Loki has been a fantastic find for Cloud9, and I think he's been the best import mid laner. Quid imported years ago, so doesn't necessarily count, but I think Loki was the right choice over Saint for Cloud9. It's the rest of this team that's had some up and down moments. Ven and Vulcan have been very good for most of this year, but not in the best of fives, and Blabber has kind of been holding this team back, even if he was okay in this particular series. There are so many things to talk about and so many directions that I think Cloud9 need to consider moving into in the future, but dud of the series for me is gonna have to go to Vulcan, and I don't really love giving Vulcan this award because, again, I want to reiterate, 5-game best of 5 series, like, dud of the series is hard. You had 2 games where you were really good, and so to find somebody where you can genuinely just say, oh, you were bad throughout this series is kind of difficult, but I do think there was a support gap in this series, even if the KDAs don't necessarily reflect that. I think Ayla was better than Vulcan in terms of how these games were played, but if you wanted to give it to Sven for leading the team in deaths as an AD carry, I think that's, totally fair. I think game 1 is really the one you're looking at on the Corki and just saying, like, man, this bot lane got absolutely shattered in that first game. If you wanted to give it to Thanatos on the top side, I do kind of agree with that as well. This is a player who needs to be the best player on the team, who needs to step up when it matters the most, and that's not something that happened here. I think Loki and Blabber were the 2 best performing members of Cloud9 in this series, especially in their wins, but it's not like they were fantastic in their losses. Quaid and River were better when 100 Thieves really needed them to step up. So really the conversation surrounding Cloud9 now is what next? What do you have to change? Because if it's not this roster, if it's not this collection of players who were all arguably top 2 or top 3 in their own individual role, if you can't even get top 3 with this roster, then what do you need to do? The coaching staff has been super invested in. You have this all-star coaching staff, quote unquote, of Reaper and an Arrow and, like, all these people who have been, super successful coaching on different teams across North American history, all coming together to fail at this juncture. Cloud9 is going to have an overhaul. I don't know what direction it's going to go in, because I think that there are a lot of places that you could change and a lot of places you could upgrade. Maybe you need new imports. Maybe you need a new jungler for the first time in, almost half a decade here with Blabber. I don't know what the solution is for Cloud9, genuinely. I don't know how you get out of this rut, but what I know is that this is completely unacceptable for this organization. And quite frankly, I know this is going to sound doomer. I think North America is significantly worse off as a region for Cloud9 not being good. Like, I think Cloud9 was really the only real chance outside of FlyQuest for competing on the international stage from a raw mechanics standpoint. Maybe 100 Thieves or a Shopify can get there, but, these teams are just better in terms of the nitty gritty, and Cloud9 could never figure that part out. They just kind of got outclassed, even if their hands are really good. So now you're looking at a situation where Cloud9's done and 100 Thieves are moving on. We're going to talk about them again in just a second when we cover the semifinals and see if they can make the miracle run really happen, but Cloud9 ends their year disappointed, and 100 Thieves are going to continue their year elated from how they played in this series. They looked incredible. They looked like the better team, and at this point, I think it's proven that everything we saw out of them in the regular season should probably be thrown out the window. The team is on a complete hot streak right now, and the momentum is going in their direction, and as we know, throughout League of Legends history, that might be the strongest force of all. But then moving on to our semi-finals matchup, and at this point, these two teams kind of playing for bragging rights, although it does matter to, get in the finals. Obviously, you do want to win the league. That's still a big accomplishment, but you get to play a little bit of an easier LTA South team if you win this series, I guess, assuming that FlyQuest ends up getting the job done. It was a matchup between the number 3 seeded Shopify Rebellion and the number 7 seeded 100 Thieves. And once again, 100 Thieves are going to pick up the victory, except this time they don't need 5 games to do it. They don't even need 4. Give them 3 games and they're going to sweep Shopify Rebellion out of the semifinals, and they're going to punch their ticket to their second finals of 2025. Still crazy to me that this team is not going to be in the league next year because, again, it just is what it is. This org has been so omnipresent and, successful. For them to not be in the league next year is certainly frustrating, but it can't be more frustrating than Shopify getting absolutely blown off the rift right now. There were a couple of players that I think played well on the side of Shopify, really just 2 in Fudge and Seos that I think were at least attempting to do something in this series. Everybody else just got absolutely destroyed. This was, called the NRG Civil War because it's Dokla and FBI versus Contracts and Palafox, and I think, unfortunately for Shopify, it really does feel like 100 Thieves take the title a bit more right now than Shopify do, so let's go ahead and get into it. This might even be a significantly quicker discussion, not only because there's less to discuss from like a results standpoint, like the consequences were less on the semifinals, ironically enough, with all of these teams already qualified, but also because these games were just not all that interesting, to be quite frank. I mean, Otacon was, something. Like I guess there's something to be talked about in terms of Otacon really being the breaking open point, but for 100 Thieves, like they're just actually on fire right now. They are playing better than they've ever played. A lot of these players are getting into that best of 5 form that they've always been known for. And I'm going to be honest, at this point, can we consider FBI the best of 5 AD carry in NA history? This guy just always shows up in best of 5s in the playoffs. You can talk about his regular season performances as being a bit more hit or miss, a bit more inconsistent. I'm still in favor of his regular season performances, maybe not this year, but generally over the course of his career, I think he's always been a bit underrated in that aspect. But every playoffs, like this guy just comes around and figures it out and starts to dominate once these pools start to get a bit more shallow. And once you go further and further into these best of 5s, FBI has just been phenomenal here. He went 22, 1, and 26 across 3 games here. He completely mega gapped B-Boy on the other side, who's genuinely been very good. He got my first team all-pro vote for the, fan voting section of this. Like, truly, B-Boy has been excellent for Shopify and a big reason why they're here. FBI outclassed him in every possible aspect, and it was on Jhin, it was on Senna, it was on Lucian. It wasn't like he was playing these like unbelievable hyper carries, although Senna can kind of be in that, brigade, I guess, if you want to consider it. It's not like a Yunara or something like that. It's definitely a bit of a different feel, and FBI was still taking over the game in that regard. Clearly, he just had a vendetta against Shopify Rebellion, and he wanted to absolutely destroy them because him and Ayla were absolutely phenomenal on the day. You got to give a lot of credit to Big Dokes as well on the top side. I'm sure this one felt pretty good. Fudge actually played really, really strong, I would say, throughout a majority of the series. Certainly the best player on Shopify Rebellion across these games, but Dokla was better. Like, he was winning lane. He was doing a great job of actually setting up tempo and creating that mid lane, as I always talk about in these team fights when it comes to things like Mbessa or Aatrox in games 1 and 3, where you need to separate the main carries from their tanks so that you can isolate the tanks and, allow the damage not to be done in these fights, especially when you're playing these front-to-back comps around a Wukong or around, a Nico. These big engages can kind of help separate that backline, and that's exactly what you want to do on these champions. And I think Dokla, again, just did that at such a high level throughout both of these games. It's cool to see the 2 energy boys, and especially for Dokla, a player who, wasn't even playing just a couple of months ago, who had not played all year long in Tier 2 or in Tier 1, for him to come in and genuinely just be able to upgrade the team, I think is really, really awesome. But the rest of the team was great as well. Already hyped up River in the previous series. You got to continue doing that. This guy is peaking at the right time. This is the best he's played all year, even when they were winning earlier on this year. I still believe that Quid, Ayla, FBI, they were doing a lot of the heavy lifting. River has been spectacular for this team so far this playoff run. Quid is the best mid laner in the league. Palafox not quite got the mechanical talent to be able to go up against that. Again, when Palafox loses, this team loses. It just kind of is what it is. It's why I don't really feel good about them at an international level, but we'll see if they even get there now because it's up for debate. Remember, only 2 teams go from North America, and then Ayla was excellent. I think Ayla is another player who is kind of showing himself to be even better in best of 5s than he is domestically in like best of 1s or best of 3s. I think these are kind of his comfort zone series, but 100 Thieves moving on to the finals, absolutely insane. And for Shopify, definitely a bit frustrating. I think this felt like like a pretty easy prediction for them to be like, yeah, we can be better than at the very least 100 Thieves. This team looks very good and there's a lot to like about them. Well, they're getting their own medicine handed to them. Exactly what happened last split when they, started upsetting teams like Team Liquid and moving on to top 3. That's what's happening to them now that they're facing a team like 100 Thieves, who are kind of the darlings of the playoff run. Still, I like Shopify Rebellion, but again, they're just so flippy, and the things that when they go wrong for Shopify, I'll just say this, they go really wrong. Like, this team can't really afford to make mistakes because they have really no way to get back into games that they've already lost. They don't really have the mechanical talent to be able to outplay team fights. They need good setups, and when you lose early, especially when this bot lane loses, because I think B-Boy is such an important member of why this team is consistent in the late game, it's cooked, and B-Boy was terrible here today. He's going to get done of the series. I really do think he was the worst player on the Rift, although Palafox certainly put up an argument and a fight for that award, in my opinion. But B-Boy, the difference between the two AD carries, like the ADC gap in this series was monumentally large, and this just goes to show where FBI is still at. He can still be a top 2 guy in terms of the AD carry role. B-Boy, as much as he's played like that at times in the regular season, has never really been able to solidify his spot as an upper tier AD carry in North America, and I think we just saw why, because when he gets behind, he just can't really play the game. Palafox once again was terrible. He was bad against FlyQuest. He was bad against 100 Thieves. Just kind of is what it is. When Palafox loses, Shopify have a really hard time being able to play the game. And really, the Palafox check is, can he survive in the early game? Again, it's B-Boy, but more, where when Palafox loses, he loses incredibly hard. It's why I think this team might struggle internationally. And again, it's just why I've projected them to do so, or even maybe not even get there in the first place, because I think if you can take advantage of the middle of the map, if you can get Palafox behind, all of a sudden Contracts doesn't have the resources he needs to push forward, and all of a sudden Seos doesn't really have a lane he can roam to try and open things up and create things for, and Shopify, like, their whole plan falls apart if Palafox is not in a good spot. So it just is what it is. Quid was better, and Quid is better. Contracts definitely got outplayed by River, although how much can you really do on Xin Zhao, Jarvan, and Zac when you're losing pressure in the early game? Already said it a bit, but Fudge, I think, was generally fine. Maybe he was over-aggressive at points, but at least he was generating some resources for Shopify. I think everybody else on the team was actively just running it. I am concerned about this team. Right now, even before this series, I was concerned that they wouldn't be a Worlds team, especially because I think, ironically enough, maybe 100 Thieves is even a worse matchup than Cloud9 theoretically would be for Shopify because of Quid in the mid lane and his just dominant laning and being able to take Palafox off of his game. But now I'm even more concerned. Now I really do wonder if this team has a shot of making the World Championships, but that really opens the door for a team like 100 Thieves, who's now top 2 in the finals. They've guaranteed themselves at the very least a top 2 spot. I'm not saying that FlyQuest is beatable, because it does really feel like that team is just better than everybody else in North America, but man, if FlyQuest end up falling, like, that number 1 seed really does matter from a regional qualification standpoint. It eliminates so much of the guesswork. You only have to play the number 1 seed and potentially beat the number 1 seed from the LTA South to qualify for Worlds, which is absolutely massive. And so 100 Thieves, potentially 1 series away now from qualifying for Worlds, genuinely absurd. All right, but that is going to do it for my LTA North Round 3 and Semifinals overview and analysis video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Up on the screen, the updated bracket. Only 1 series remains domestically, of course. Shopify Rebellion still alive. Their year is not over. They get to go to the regional qualification series to kind of talk about, or I guess figure out if they can make Worlds. That would be awesome for this team, but the finals is really going to be fun now. It's the team that everybody knows is the best team in North America, that have proven that they are the best team in NA over the course of this year, in FlyQuest taking on the underdogs, the miracle team of 2025 and 100 Thieves. Obviously, predictions-wise, this is pretty easy for me. I think this will be a Fly 3-0. As much as we talk about, I went on a big tangent in the last series where it's like, the people who are talking about Cloud9 being underdogs against 100 Thieves are insane. Turns out I was the one who was insane. I was the one who was wrong on that front, because Cloud9 do end up dropping. Cloud9 are, Fly is not Cloud9. Like, I want to make that clear. There was already a tier gap, I think, between Cloud9 and FlyQuest. I was not on board with C9 being as good as Fly. I just thought they were better than Shopify and 100 Thieves. I thought they were clearly the number 2 team, and they just never really lived up to that. Fly is a different story. This team has been hyper consistent this year. They have a great game plan. I think they will win this series, and I think they will be an easy lock to go to Worlds and maybe still make some noise at Worlds. I feel worse about North America now that Cloud9 is gone, but Fly really is the last hope for NA to actually make a difference. 100 Thieves have been on a miracle run. Really, it's just about maintaining as much momentum as possible going into the Worlds qualification qualification tournament, because I don't think you're winning the finals here, no matter how much it ends up being a Cinderella story. But let me know if you agree or disagree. Do you think 100 Thieves have more of a chance than I think going into this finals, or do you also agree that Fly 3-0 is by far the most likely outcome? Curious to know your thoughts and opinions down below. But that's gonna do it. I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. It really does mean a lot to me. Lets me know you guys are enjoying the content, and it does help get this video out to a lot more people, which I'm always very appreciative of. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. Of course, we'll be covering the finals game by game in its own separate video. They're happening today, and a couple hours after this video is getting posted. That video will hopefully be up in the next day or two. There's so many things that I need to cover and make sure are time sensitive in terms of, covering all the regions, but assuredly the LTA finals video will be out at the very least in the next couple of days. But if you want to see that video, and you also want to see maybe my coverage of all three of the other major regions, LEC, LCK, and LPL, hit subscribe and hit that bell. We're also covering the NACL playoffs. Finals for that are upcoming and right around the corner. If you want to see the teams that potentially have a chance to promote into the LTA North next year and talk about potential Tier 1 options, check out those videos. And of course, I'm still casting for LPL English. That is something that I'm actually doing tonight as this video goes live. It's a busy day. LTA finals later, and then throughout the night, we've got that cast. It's the playoffs over in the LPL. It won't be my final playoff cast, but I'd love to see you there live. Go ahead and check out the links in the description to the YouTube, the Twitch, follow, subscribe, whatever platform you prefer, and come say hi in chat. Very curious to see you guys around there, and if you want to see me cast live and, just kind of get my thoughts on some games in a more live and a more free-flowing setting, that's definitely a great place to do it. But with all that being said, I hope you all are having a great day. I hope you continue to have a great day, and I will see you all